Okay, welcome everybody. As many of you have probably anticipated, we're going to wait a few minutes to get started as we let the Zoom logjam wrap up and clear out. Good luck to everybody's Zoom today. This is my third call today, and there's been bumps in the road at every turn. I think there was a update or something. So we'll get through this as the best we can. Just a couple more minutes. Okay, I think we will get started. So thank you for everybody for jumping on the first Dr. NAACLS of 2023. We are recording this on January 19th. And the reason we timestamp these is because I'm sure everybody knows we make these available on the NAACLS News and the NAACLS YouTube page. So if you're watching this at a later date, either you couldn't make the live session or you just want to refresh some of the ideas. And if we start getting into compliance discussion, I encourage you to double check the website and staff to make sure those compliance requirements haven't changed, because standard compliance issues can change twice a year. So today's team, we have Robert Cottrell, who is the president-elect of the NAACLS Board of Directors, Marisa James, who is the NAACLS Chief Executive Officer, and my name is Mark Spence. The good news is that because since today's session deals with innovation, I'll probably be talking less than I usually do. So if you usually attend Dr. NAACLS, you're kind of tired of the sound of my voice, completely understandable, believe me, they'll do most of the talking. So a real quick note on today's session. We received an overwhelming amount of feedback to this question that we ask on the annual survey, which is what innovative things have you done within your program? I mean, literally, I did an export to Word and I think we had over 100 pages. So obviously we couldn't feature everything. So what we try to do is we try to identify some trends that we thought would be of use to programs, maybe things a little more accessible than buying technology and things of that nature, because we know that budgets can vary drastically among our accredited programs. And also a handful of specific examples that stood out to us. These examples aren't to imply that if you weren't chosen, you aren't doing a good job. At some point, we had to make a final list. As I said, it was extremely impressive, the sheer amount of innovative practices that our programs are doing, but we had to to keep this an hour and not a multi-part session, we had to edit down quite a bit. So first we're going to start out with some themes. And the first one we identified is the many different places that programs found inspiration for their innovation. And so Marisa, I will hand it off to you.
Yes, thank you, Mark. Good afternoon, NAACLS community. This is my favorite Dr. NAACLS because, like Mark, I love going through the pages and pages and pages of innovation that you all are doing. So whatever it is to help improve your programs, develop your faculty, engage your students, I love listening to or reading all of this information, and hopefully you'll enjoy listening to some of the things that we found out. So the innovation and inspiration. So a lot of times our programs, we're using existing products that they already have, the existing software, and then enhancing them with maybe additional case studies or even having their students do a little bit of the work. I recall reading something that said they assigned all of their students an instrument to share the inner workings and teach their fellow students how the inner workings of the instrument worked. And then also online case studies, voiceover lectures, using a lot of the software that people already had in place and just enhancing that.
Robert, did anything stand out to you with this specifically the variety of communities program directors drew innovation from?
Yes, first of all, again, good afternoon, NAACLS community, and thank you for this opportunity. And let me just take one moment just to thank you, Mark, because you were instrumental in putting this together, and the support of the NAACLS staff and our CEO, Marisa, is just paramount to our success. And thank you all for submitting your responses, for making them robust, and hopefully we can use this to continue with additional volunteer support. I would say what stood out to me is that so many individuals took it upon themselves to just really think outside the box. You know, that's part of what we look for in this community, right? Mavericks that are forward thinking and, you know, are not waiting for someone else to hand them a decision from their respective institutions, whether or not they got supplemental learning materials such as Accredited, Kahoots. Maybe they went through different virtual learning tools, or they bought 3D models or did 3D printing. You know, it just, I think this community really showed that they took chances to just increase, you know, their ability to bring into the classroom different modalities, whether it was a 3D model or using, again, supplemental web-based products that hopefully, you know, didn't cost an arm and a leg, or that you were able to use institutional funds or even grant funding to purchase. So that's what kind of stood out to me.
Okay, so another thing is kind of mentioned before is we notice a lot of people finding, repurposing things they already had, or finding ways to review their internal structures to find inefficiencies and how to handle improvement without a massive investment. Marisa, did you have anything to add to this? You kind of talked about it a little bit with the previous slide.
Yeah, I kind of married these first two slides together. Like Robert alluded to, there are some self-paced tutorials that people used as well to kind of enhance what they're already teaching in the classroom, to kind of give that extra. Some students need a little extra. And so there were a lot of faculty members who developed additional materials to help their students maybe do homework, things along those lines.
Robert, anything to add?
I would say additionally, I don't know, it wasn't necessarily a major theme throughout, but one thing we should probably touch on is that individuals, you know, understood that not only do they have to look for bringing something into the classroom for the defined course, but they looked at the overall wellness of their students, the anxiety that students have been put through, and making sure that they had the proper wellness support for individuals for that, you know, emotional, spiritual, physical, you know, well-being through peer academic support systems at their respective institutions, counseling services. So I noticed that that did come up, and individuals did speak about that. And that's something I think we could all still learn from, and hopefully we all continue to incorporate that supportive structure, okay, into our academic programs as well as our clinical.
Yeah, certainly. And I actually think we have a kind of a specific example of that in a few slides. Another things we found was expansion, which is programs outreaching specifically to secondary level, but also what we were calling in-reach programs, building inroads to a lot of times graduates of general science programs. Marisa, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so there were some open houses for high school students that I really enjoyed reading about. They had their high school students do blood typing, identify different cells. They played games to just kind of engage high school kiddos. I also saw there was a high school or a college credit course offered in high school. It was an MLT type of level program, which you know, it serves purpose to educate high school students and promote our profession, but then also just gives them, you know, maybe they don't want to be an an MLT. Maybe they still want to get into medicine, but they still need to learn some of those things. So I enjoyed that. The in-reach was a lot of these adult apprenticeships and partnering with hospitals to send their bachelor degree students. So these are students who have not gone through a NAACLS accredited program yet, obviously. And so then you're trying to incorporate those individuals and get them through maybe an MLS program or an MLT program using adult apprenticeships. And then other expansions were 2 cohorts, a January, a July class, doubling the size of their programs, adding new university partners or clinical affiliates. So lots of ways to take expansion, whether it's kind of the recruiting piece of it or building your own program from within.
Robert?
I would agree on all those statements, Marisa, and it's nice to see that more and more high schools in particular are offering those ECE, college credits, and we're seeing more and more biotech schools that are arising, high schools, magnet schools, STEM schools that are incorporating histology, laboratory sciences into their programs, and having those ECE courses is really beneficial to decreasing that financial burden for individuals entering, academia as a whole, and also looking to return those adult learners back into the system is something that we're seeing. But no, I would agree on all those points. Well said.
Asynchronous education, there's not a lot of specifics, I don't think, that I know that Marisa doesn't have, because it's pretty cut and dry, but what we saw was repeated references to trying to offer this asynchronous education to accommodate students who are working full time so they can work within reason on their own pace and at their own time. So obviously allowing the flexibility to create more access to the programs and maybe reaching out to some of those populations that Robert just referred to. Essential skills. So a lot of, and Robert already kind of touched on this a little bit, but a lot of references to obviously not only the entry-level competencies, but really developing students' emotional intelligence and communication skills, often referred to as soft skills. Unfortunately, there's not a better term than that. But Marisa, did you have something you want to add to this?
Yeah, so there was a mentoring program, I think, that we're going to highlight here in a few minutes. And then there's also work ethics. I saw someone created a course for work ethics, and then a new college student success course. So these were all things to help our students adapt. And so that was kind of interesting to me. Other things were kind of what Robert alluded to earlier, but the flexibility of the hybrid work environment really does tap into mental health well-being and giving yourself, giving students a break. Also, 4-day work weeks I saw, where students just come in on Fridays to take exams. Weekend workshops are less of a time commitment, so students don't have to commute as much. Or maybe that's if they have a family, maybe that's when their significant other can stay back with the family and they can do their schoolwork when they actually have childcare and they don't have to pay for it as much. Things along those lines. Clinicals that are closer to home, reaching out to additional hospitals that are closer to where they're at. These were a lot of different things that help the student get through a program with their mental health still at the forefront.
Robert, anything to add?
Yes, I mean, I agree with all those statements. Other things that we should be mindful of when you go to look to, build this or utilize your resources at your institutions. Not only do we want to pay attention to that academic support, but we also want to look at during 2020, 2021, even now, we still have students that may encounter a work-life imbalance, or that they are, spread too thin with trying to complete their courses, manage their life, and they might encounter some difficulties that we may not be aware of because the system isn't designed to alert us to, say, a food insecurity at home, or someone that's not able to pay for, say, home heating due to soaring prices. So we can utilize our kind of a learning kind of common support structure at our institutions, where not only are we looking for that support for them in our programs, but what happens when they go home? How can we support them reasonably when they leave us? Okay, maybe this isn't the best slide to talk about that, but I think it ties in overall.
Surprise partnerships came up a lot. Things that I don't think NAACLS expected to see, especially broadcast lectures from Sweden and programs really thinking outside the box for IPE outreach. Marisa?
Yeah, so a lot of this was high schools, but then also there were a lot of opportunities that people shared resources with the nursing programs and developing some sort of an IPE collaboration with them and with their nursing students as well. And so that I love that. That's something that I am very, very supportive of for our programs, trying to help students, laboratory students, understand the nursing profession and vice versa. We really do work so closely together. So I loved seeing those opportunities. Some of them were in the real clinical setting. Some of them were more part of like a sim lab or some sort of a workshop. And some of them were actually not with nurses, but they had actors that were posing as nurses and, pushing back with some of the questions of, so why is this, why is this sample not appropriate, or whatever the case may be. And so I love seeing that, because, when I was a program director, I always told my students the best learning tool in the lab was actually the phone. And so I loved seeing those phone calls, that simulated phone calls that, that you really have to be on top of your game to be able to answer those questions, those random questions that when you pick up the phone. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was nice to see that not only was there IPE within their institutions, but that outreach. And once you start an IPE and you have, whether it's successful or not, you learn from it and you catch that IPE bug and you want to do more. So I can't wait to see our repeat IPE, submissions over the years.
Yes.
Oh, I went backwards. Okay, so we did, as I mentioned before, there were some specific examples that did speak to us a little bit and weren't easily bracketed under the themes we identified before. One was no homework, no exam. And Marisa, I'll let you go into this more.
Yeah, so I loved this. This was so great. So, you definitely want students to be prepared for their examinations so that they are successful eventually to pass their boards. And a lot of times if they're not studying, you're going to have to assign them homework. And so I loved this idea where a program director would assign homework, and if they did not turn it in, then they could not sit for their exam. And so in doing that homework, the thought process, I assume, is to make sure they're studying at the same time. So this one was really clever, and I loved it.
Robert, did you have anything to add?
No, I don't. It's very interesting. I haven't practiced it myself, but it gave me some time to reflect and think of how we can introduce that into courses. So it was just eye-opening and something I can learn from.
Real quick, Marisa, I see you're answering them in the chat, but maybe we should answer them over live. We fell into the trap that laboratorians do and accreditors do is we start using acronyms that we assume everybody else knows. And we shouldn't make that assumption. So Marisa, can you just set the table and explain what IPE is?
Yes. Thank you for that question, Ruth. Interprofessional education is basically what it is. And so it's just different professions working together. So nursing and lab, pharmacy and nursing, even a specific set of nurses and a different, surgical nurses and emergency department nurses. So this is IPE is a term that's used in a lot of medical professions and required part of their standard practice. And so the laboratory is really trying to get into that as well, and trying to be a little less siloed.
Great. Again, thank you for that question, Ruth.
Mm-hmm.
As you'll see here, this is kind of an example that somebody gave of tracking an at-risk student. This was a very long answer, and we tried to pull the major bullet points. This program identifies at-risk students as individuals who may not be putting, or what they read as not putting 100% effort into full descriptive answers on any assignment. So Marisa, do you kind of want to walk us through this?
Yeah, so at-risk students kind of need to be taken a closer look, need to have a closer watch. They're kind of on the watch list, if you will. And so the program director in this particular instance likes to offer assistance and resources for them. And oftentimes, I believe they would pair them with their clinical mentors. So not all of the burden is on the program director. Some of it is. They kind of have touch points with program directors, but they also have clinical mentors that are checking in with the program director and the student. Both are kind of, I kind of look at them as a liaison. Is basically what I'm seeing reading this. And so what this does also is it builds a supporting network for that student. So not only do they have their clinical mentor that they can talk with, but they also know they have a program director. And just kind of that, multifaceted approach is going to be extremely helpful for these at-risk students. And they're at risk for, who knows what the, different reason is. It could be, home life struggles. It could be academic struggles. There's a lot of different, ways to look at this. And so having those conversations and almost like this open door policy, I was really moved by the program's effort to make sure students are not, they're keeping up, and that they're, that we're checking in with them.
Robert, any thoughts?
Yes, it's something we all, I would say, have practiced, and in this situation, it's clear that, that there was a process in place. And it's also important to document and use this information to almost build a plan, an outline that the student can also follow, so that they feel like they've had input, they have a plan, and it's keeping them engaged. And I think the key here was the communication. It was effective, it was constant, and it brought multiple, individuals at different tiers in on the process.
A preceptor academy. This, I think, can be mostly cut and dry, but obviously if Marisa or Robert have things to expand on. But we have I think in this case was a phlebotomy program that brought in every year all of their clinical preceptors and supervisors, and had an academy featuring a panel of speakers to offer professional development and things of that nature. Marisa, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I would add to this is just, many laboratory professionals, some of them are professors, yes, but some of them they just work in a hospital and they have students and they have to figure out how to teach. And so this is a supportive culture that I like to see from our programs, is they are trying to help those non-teachers teach students in these clinical settings. Because, you know, contrary to a regular classroom that's very controlled, you can't control what's going on in the hospital. You can't control what the patients are doing, you know, when you're trying to teach a student in this room with a patient, if this is, you know, related to a phlebotomy program. And so these preceptor academies are very, very helpful for those individuals who do not have a teaching background, and sometimes for the teachers that are introverted and you know, may have a little bit more trouble expressing themselves to teach, but it's part of their job because they work in that hospital that has a program.
And for me, I look at this and I see so many opportunities. One, you know, you could woven this into part of your advisory council, right? Mm-hmm. Committee. You could create continuing education credit opportunities and even document for self-studies that you as an institution are providing additional resources and support for individuals that are not employed. You know, you have that relationship through that clinical agreement, that contract, but it's a great means to really bolster, you know, relationships and a really good system to document for your self-study. It hits a few of those buckets.
And then we saw a lot of references to making games or gamification of lessons. So Marisa, I'll kind of let you explain this specific situation or enter any other examples you saw.
Yeah, so this one is, so the Celevision is an instrument that has an app, and it pops up different cells. And it's, you know, students or whoever could play the game and you get a certain score. And so this program, it sounds like she did her own or his or her own competition within their program. There was also a national Celevision game that Tiffany Gill and ASCP organized. And so, and I don't know if they were talking about this or not, I can't remember exactly who brought this up, but these are like games, competition, and it's just, I've played this game, it's a lot of fun. I would get frustrated because I didn't know how to, I couldn't beat it, I couldn't beat my students, and so that makes me angry because I'm competitive. But this is just a really great way to engage students and help them study as well. Yeah, I mean, you can participate in the national game, you can do it, you know, just within your own program. And so, and there were, I'm trying to think of some of the other examples, Robert, you might remember, but it seems like competition is and just the games, the Kahoots that you alluded to earlier, these are all just ways to make learning fun, ways to make studying fun. And so that's, you know, I liked this one too.
Yeah, this was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, it just gave me another, you know, device, app, you know, web-based program to look in and invest in potentially. I love Kahoots. My students love it because they like that competition, and they absolutely blow me out of the water because you could time it. You could, you know, woven that into all sorts of bonuses or what I offer is free food. I always make sure I feed the students. You know, a well-fed student performs better. Socrative is a great system because, again, they have different tiers and versions. So a free service or a pay for service, but it really allows you to create content that you can keep, you can expand upon, adapt it to several different courses. So they're really getting better over time. But Kahoots is one of my favorite, but this was a fantastic example.
Next, we have the general Q&A. Before we get to the general Q&A, I want to mention something I should have probably started with. These are just things we found interesting. These are not official recommendations from an accreditation agency. I don't want anybody in the back of their mind thinking, oh gosh, I have a site visit in 2 months and now I need to have a whole IPE system planned out. These are just, and we have our own accreditor too. So when Chia starts making recommendations to us, we generally think, I'm like, well, is this a requirement or is this a recommendation? But I want to stress, like, these are just items of interest. These are not things you'll be evaluated on in the near future. So just in case we were making anybody nervous. I do see we have one Q&A in the chat. That's great. We'll get to those in a bit. If anybody has any questions, either directly related to this session or anything that applies to NAACLS policies, procedures, standards, feel free to, you can raise your hand and we can do this over the mic too. I will give you permission to talk, or you can enter it into the text Q&A. We allow both. Before we get to the Q&A, I want to, first of all, thank the volunteers. I see multiple volunteers that are on the session today. I'm not going to try to name any of you because I will miss one and then I'll feel bad. But thank you for your time. We have committee members. I even saw a former board president on. I don't know if he's still on. But the names you see are our discipline lead persons. These are review committee members that are here for standard interpretation. All of NAACLS staff, except for Marisa, does not have a lab background. Our expertise is in policy and procedure. And there's some standards that we've heard the review committees talk about enough. We can kind of give you a general answer, but for standard interpretation, you're going to want to contact the people here. Their contact information is on the program director's page of our website. Just a quick caveat is they are not necessarily they're here to consult. They're not here to give your self-study a once-over or give a preliminary review to a progress report. They can maybe talk to you what the review committees are looking for in general for assessment, standard 2B. But again, the specifics of a whole report, they're not necessarily there to go down an itemized list. So just keep that in mind. They are volunteers and we want to be respectful of their time. Speaking about volunteers, we have some volunteer opportunities open right now. So I wanted to pull this up. What you're seeing here is the NAACLS news. In the September board report, within the document, we are looking for volunteers for two task forces. One is our Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access Task Force, or IDEA. That is our terminology for DEI. And an international task force. So task forces are very short-term groups that have a specific charge by the board of directors, and once they fulfill that charge, they are relieved. The task forces are appointed by the board of directors. So we have a very short form. It's essentially your name, your email, and a short narrative explaining why you're interested that you can click and complete right there. So please complete that by February 1st if you have any interest. Also, we still have a, let me scroll. We're looking for nominations for review committees and the board of directors. So as you'll see here, these are the memberships we're looking for if you have interest in being on a review committee and the board of directors. Well, the review committees, I'm going to bring up the board of directors in a little bit because there is a very specific position we're looking for that. So if you have already been nominated or self-nominate for the review committees, please, I encourage you to do so again. It is incredibly rare for an individual to make a review committee on their first try. And generally that's because they've already been on a review committee before and they have a very good stellar reputation of getting work done on time, knowing the standards, et cetera, et cetera. So I just don't want people to be discouraged if it takes them 2, 3, 4 times to make a review committee. The 4-year educator on the board of directors, for those of you individuals at a 4-year program, a university, if you have a dean or a higher administration that you just think would fit in well with the NAACLS culture, I encourage you to nominate them through this link. One quick note on that is our 4-year educators on our board of directors, they also serve almost like a pseudo public member. So what that means is they can't have a certification in anything we accredit. So unfortunately, if you were on a review committee and you would like to sit on the board of directors, we would love to have you, but this is not the avenue that you can really try to get elected to the board of directors. So again, if you have, again, a dean or a higher level position that you enjoy working with and just think would fit in well with the NAACLS culture, please, please, please fill out those nominations. Or if you have more questions, please email me. Those 4-year educators can be a challenge to find the appropriate individuals, because most of the people we talk to a lot have that laboratory certification. So those are my plugs. Give me 1 second to bring up my fun GIFs, and then we'll get to the Q&A. From Leslie Allhouse, do either of you remember what other apps you mentioned besides Kahoot, or what may come to mind?
There's Socrative, there's Blooket, Blooket. I could write those in.
Oh yeah, thank you. I was gonna write them in.
We'll just move on then if you're typing those, Robert. Is there a response from NAACLS regarding an application for a review committee volunteer if you are not chosen? Yeah, generally I do respond to all of those. If this is something where either your nomination slipped through the cracks or it got eaten up by by a spam filter, I do apologize, but I do try to respond to everybody who's been nominated. Many times those nomination process, even though we ask for the process, start the process as early as November, it's not resolved until April, late April at that. So you may not hear from me until May, but I do try my best to reply to everybody, notify everybody who was nominated. Any other questions? You can type them in the chat. You can raise your hand and I can give you open access to speak.
So Mark,
well, yeah,
we didn't say anything about this is our 50th anniversary year. I
was just about to, but I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, well, I can hardly contain myself. NAACLS was created in 1973. So it was actually late fall 1973. So we're going to spend all year long celebrating. And so you'll probably see lots of articles in the NAACLS news. And you may have noticed that we've got our cute little Zoom backgrounds. And if you email us, you'll see we've got new logo for the year. And we're going to have a bit of a party at CLEC this year, the Clinical Lab Educators Conference in New Orleans. And so we'll always have our workshop Thursday morning, right before CLEC. And rumor has it, we might have some mimosas there to kick off at 7 a.m. And then later on in the evening, when we have the, normally there's an exhibit reception in the exhibit hall with the exhibitors. NAACLS is going to host, I'm not going to tell you what the yummy dessert is, but you'll just have to visit in person. But we're going to have some goodies and just a little reception and you know, probably a cake. And yeah, so just lots of fun stuff. That'll be Thursday night of CLEC. And so, yeah, we're pretty excited about celebrating during the year.
Do we have available free swag that might be going out, Marisa? Or
perhaps there could be. Yep, lots of fun stuff. I love the new logo, so I keep getting stuff.
It doesn't look like there's any other questions, so we will wrap it up. Again, keep an eye on the NAACLS news. We're probably going to be releasing information about February's Dr. NAACLS, which is about site visit prep in the next couple of weeks. So, because it is that time of year to start getting ready for site visits. So